To make processed construction materials that are needed for higher tier facilities, we need to build a Metalworks factory. To do that, we press a B to open the build menu, and if we come to the facilities category and hover over the Metalworks factory, we can see that we need a construction vehicle and 125 construction material. Once we build the Metalworks factory, we can see that we get two recipes. One recipe is making 3 construction materials and 20 components into one processed construction material. That will require 5 megawatts of power and a production time of 1 minute. The other recipe is 3 processed construction materials will turn into one pipe, and that will also require 5 megawatts of power and has a production time of 2 minutes. To place a Metalworks factory, we left click on the Metalworks factory icon in the build menu. That will place the blueprint of the facility underneath our mouse cursor. If we hold down the right mouse button, we can rotate the facility. If we look above the door, we can see the connection point for power. As a side note, this is in dev branch and there's something weird with the hitbox of the Metalworks factory right now, so I'm going to place it very weirdly because that apparently is the only way that I can put it in. Once the Metalworks factory turns yellow, we can left click to place the blueprint. We drive up our CV and hold down the left mouse button to start building the Metalworks facility. Now that the Metalworks factory is built, we can press E to open its menu, and we can see that in the production panel we have the 2 recipes. On the right side we have the stockpile that holds the materials that are needed for the recipes and the materials that are made. We can also see that there is a status panel that shows us the amount of power that is required and how much power we currently have. And in the upgrades panel, we can see that there is 3 possible upgrades for the Metalworks factory. We can see that the first upgrade is the blast furnace that will produce a larger quantity of processed construction materials and 2 types of assembly materials. There is the recycler, which has a recipe that makes 1 processed construction material and 1 metal beam. That 1 metal beam is the metal beams that are used for making tank traps. The other recipe in the recycler is turning damaged components into normal components, and there is a third upgrade, and that's the engineering station. And the engineering station allows the production of a steel construction materials and a other type of assembly materials. To supply a Metalworks factory, we bring construction materials and components in a truck to the Metalworks factory. We press, in this case, Shift E to get the interaction menu and choose the Metalworks factory. With the Metalworks factory open, if we come to the inventory of our truck and we right click on one of the icons of the materials, we can choose Submit All to Stockpile. That will put the construction materials and components into the stockpile of the Metalworks factory. We now turn on the first recipe that turns 3 construction materials and 20 components into a 1 processed construction material. We can see that it will start producing. As soon as we have 3 processed construction materials, we can turn those into a pipe by changing the recipe from the first one to the second one. Now that we have 3 processed construction materials, we can switch the recipe from making processed construction materials to using 3 processed construction materials to make a pipe. For that, we come to the switch behind the pipe recipe and simply click on it. That will turn on our pipe recipe and turn off the recipe for processed construction materials. Also, as soon as the recipe started, it took out the 3 processed construction materials and put it into the production chain. To be able to process damaged components, we need the recycler upgrade on the Metalworks factory. For that, we need 25 construction materials. We come to the Metalworks factory, press Shift E to get the interaction menu and choose the Metalworks Factory. That will open up the menu. We can see that if we hover over the recycler that indeed we need 25 construction materials. We put the 25 construction materials in the inventory of the Metalworks Factory and not in the stockpile. We do that by shift clicking on the construction materials. That will move the entire stack at once. And then because we're going to upgrade a facility, we have to hop out of our vehicle. We can't modify a structure from within the vehicle. So we hop out, press Shift E and open up the Metalworks Factory again. Come to the upgrades panel and we left click on the recycler icon and that will start modifying the structure. As soon as we're done modifying, we can see that the model of the Metalworks Factory changed. And if we now press Shift E to open up the interaction menu and choose the Metalworks Factory, we can see that we have two extra recipes. The first recycler recipe is almost the same as the normal first recipe, with the change that it also produces metal beams. The second recipe we gained with the recycler is the one that makes it so that we can turn damaged components into normal components. To mine damaged components, we need a stationary component harvester that is upgraded. Press E to open it up and we can then retrieve the damaged components from the stockpile. With the damaged components in our truck, we drive to our Metalworks Factory that has the recycler upgrade. We press E to open the Metalworks Factory. We right click on the damaged components. Select Submit All to Stockpile in the drop-down menu. That will put the damaged components into the stockpile of the Metalworks Factory. And we can then turn on the recipe that turns damaged components into normal components. Apparently, in hindsight, we didn't need the 25 construction materials in the inventory, but they are taken from the stockpile, which is kind of counterintuitive.